All right, I think we are live. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late here, guys. I was actually just finishing up some rolling shots of the car I'm reviewing this week, which is the 2022 Volkswagen Jetta GLI with a stick. So I was just out filming that, and so held up a few minutes here. But thank you guys for joining me. Those of you who are here for the monthly live stream, and yeah, so like all the other live streams, I'm going to go for about 2 hours here and just try and answer as many questions and just kind of hang out and talk cars with you guys. And, we'll just talk about whatever pops up here in the comments. And as usual, any super chats, any kind of super stickers, anything like that will take priority. But of course, I'll try and answer as many questions as I can. But that is, going to take priority, of course, anyone who wants to do that. But yeah, so I'm glad to see everyone still here. Hopefully, you guys are having a good weekend, and hopefully, everyone can hear me okay here and all that. I'm going to be probably trying next month to improve my camera setup because I know I'm just using my webcam here on my MacBook, and so I know it's probably not the best quality. So I'm going to try and upgrade that next month. But otherwise, yeah, hopefully, you guys are all doing good, and glad to see everyone joining. But anyone who has any questions, feel free to ask them here. But in the meantime, I can just mention this 2022 Jetta GLI that I have this week is a lot of fun. It's a really interesting thing. I've been kind of trying to look at it from a different perspective now since they raised the pricing on it to try and figure out the niche where that vehicle resides and, where it makes sense from a money standpoint. Considering, specs wise, it's actually pretty close to the new Civic Si now with that, being underrated from the factory, but realistically probably doing pretty similar power to that Jetta GLI now. And so it'll be an interesting video. So stay tuned for that here. Probably in about 2 weeks or so, that one will be going live. But I see we have some questions here now. Luco says he just bought a 2018 RAV4 XLE yesterday and loves it so far. Traded in a Nissan Frontier because of the gas prices. Yeah, gas prices are definitely rough these days, but congrats on the new RAV4. That'll be, definitely a big improvement over a Frontier, I'm sure, and should be a really solid car for a long time. My sister-in-law has a 2019 RAV4, actually. It's the newer generation, but she absolutely loves it. They're great cars. Yeah, Yanel, thank you so much for joining. Says, hey, Matt, good to see you. Excited for the new Batman movie next weekend. Yeah, I haven't been following the new one that closely. I've been a pretty bad Batman fan ever since the Christian Bale movies. It's crazy, but I know I'm a huge Batman fan, but I still have not even seen the Ben Affleck Batman movies because just life gets in the way. I get busy, and then especially those ones being like 3 hours long. I just have never had 3 hours with nothing to do where I'm just like, I'll just sit down and spend 3 hours watching this. So I just haven't gotten around to watching the Batman movies. We'll see if I can get around to watching this new one, but yeah, it might be a little bit of a while. So, and anyway, but thank you for the question. Nikito says he misses the iconic big mic. Yeah, those who remember the weekly updates when I used to have the mic front and center and there were many phallic jokes made about it. That's actually still the mic that I use. I just hide it, but actually that's what I'm using right now currently to do this. But it's still here. It still is a fantastic mic. These Blue Yetis are the best. And so it still lives on, even if it's not visible, just to avoid all the jokes. D. Ott says, how's the Mustang? You ever consider getting a GT500? I love the Bullet. I have no interest in getting anything other than the Bullet. That's actually, I think I covered that in one of my updates, I think probably last year as well on the Bullet, that I love it so much. Like I would rather have it over a GT350. The GT500 is sweet, but in my opinion, at least for the kind of driving that I do, it's overkill. Even a GT350 is overkill. I like something that's a little more comfortable since I do a lot of road trips whenever I am driving my own car. And, the Bullet's way more comfortable than both of the Shelbys would be. And I also just I love 750 horsepower. It's a blast. I would be, it'd be very fun to have, if I had, a gazillion cars, I'd probably have one in the collection. But it just seems to be overkill for the streets here, where even my Bullet, like redlining that thing second gear will take you well into highway speeds. And, it's even trying to ring that thing out. It's kind of hard sometimes. So yeah, no plans to get anything faster. I'm just planning on keeping the Bullet, which I know is real boring from a content standpoint when everyone's used to people flipping cars every, year or two for new content, but I love the Bullet. That's what I've always wanted to have, and I plan to keep it my whole life. Hopefully someday I'll add some other cars, to the fleet to freshen things up. In the meantime, this year, Beth will be getting a new car. It'll be our new family vehicle, and I'm hoping to do some content on that as well. And so you guys can stay tuned for that. We're still up in the air about our decision, though. There's even been some interesting curves here in the past few weeks as far as what we may end up doing. So I hate being like cryptic and vague about it currently, but I just don't want to like post all of our plans and have our plans change and all that kind of stuff. So we will reveal all and talk about the winding road that led us to whatever we end up getting sometime this year. I was thinking it was going to be spring because that's when Beth's lease is up, but because of how long it takes to get anything these days, and we kind of like custom ordering stuff and finding exactly what we want, it might be beyond this spring. I think what's going to actually happen with Beth's car is we're going to be ending up buying out her lease and owning that car for a few months beyond when we were planning to, in order to give us the time to evaluate the couple of options that we're considering, and then we'll make our decision. So it might be towards the middle of this year before we actually end up swapping her car out. But anyway, I don't want to get behind on the questions here, so I'm going to scroll down. But Newt Media, thank you so much for joining the live stream here and moderating. And congrats, he is the new owner of a BRZ. He picked up BRZ TS a couple of weeks ago. And so huge congrats, Zach, on that. And yeah, he was a huge BRZ fan from the very early days of the channel and stuff. And so for you to have a BRZ is super awesome, man. So congrats. Hopefully you're enjoying it a lot. And I'll have to come check it out sometime. So, and we have other questions here. Oh, Jonah says he misses the TV too from the weekly updates. Yeah, the TV is still sitting in a box since we moved, and not really anywhere to put it here. But hopefully you guys are okay with me just kind of superimposing the images there. I am still hoping to someday have a better weekly update set, and that's something that might work out this year. It's kind of a long shot, but we'll see about improving the production values of the weekly updates here. But anyway, yeah. New Media says it's just a regular limited, not a TS. Sorry, I got it confused. For some reason, I thought it was a TS for a second there. But anyway, I'm glad you're loving it. That's awesome. And the 1K says, good afternoon, Mr. Maran. Refute the following proposal, please. Porsche should put the 718 Cayman's turbo flat 4 and PDK into the 86 chassis and call it the 924. Could it be sold for 50 grand? That would be awesome if Subaru and Toyota were willing to pair up. That would be a really fun build, though, if someone wants to do that. But as far as, from a manufacturer standpoint, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, in a hypothetical world where they would all work together, you could maybe do something like that. Under 50 grand, I don't know. I mean, look at how much Subaru's even charging for a regular WRX with a turbo flat 4. Doesn't even have any kind of advanced transmission. And even that with adaptive dampers, with the GT trim, with the CVT, you're looking at 42 grand. So, I mean, it's a fun thing to think about. Maybe it could be just under 50, but I think, the 86 is a really good poor man's Cayman in a lot of ways, not derogatory at all. Just it's, kind of an affordable, and in some ways that makes it better than a Cayman, I think, actually. But, I think that it's, I feel like if you could afford, something in the $50,000 range, you're probably better off just getting a used Cayman anyway, as long as you're okay with the reliability of, having an older German vehicle. But they're fantastic, and it's probably a great step up too, because my buddy actually started with a Scion FRS and now is driving a Cayman GTS 4.0. Absolutely loves it, but it's a great stepping stone if you're able to make the financial leap. But he actually still has his FRS because it's a fun car he can now not worry about. If it gets rock chips and stuff, you can just have fun with it. And so anyway, it's a fun idea though. But anyway, Tu Chang, thank you so much for the first super chat here. He says, would you ever pull a glitch gimmick video? Welcome to Static SuperX fan, y'all. I thought I disappeared. Well, speaking of Static, I've been seeing a bunch of people, speaking of glitches and all that kind of stuff, there's been a bunch of talk of NFTs recently, and that's been something that keeps coming up. I don't see it on my feed, but Beth, her like Instagram feed and Twitter feeds are like nothing but like everyone doing NFTs. And I still don't fully wrap my head around NFTs, but that's something I was thinking about polling you guys, down the road, if that's something you would want to maybe add to my, merch store in addition to the shirts and stuff. Because Teespring, which is who does all the merch for me, they are actually planning on doing NFTs. Again, I don't see the hype around them, but if that's something that some of you guys would want, definitely let me know, and I could see if that's something that's worth working on. But yeah, just don't know why that triggered that. But anyway, thank you for the super chat, to Chang. Newt says, I popped the hood on my BRZ and instantly thought, a 3.0 R motor could easily fit in here. Now I want to buy a wrecked one and do that swap. That would be sweet. I mean, you lose the high revving nature unless you build it up for higher RPMs, but that would be very cool. And if you are wanting more power, though, I mean, the supercharged BRZ that I reviewed a while back, that felt basically kind of, I mean, if you do the right supercharger, it kind of just feels like a 6-cylinder. It kind of feels like you have a Porsche motor under the hood or something, because it doesn't have any kind of peaky boost characteristics. It's just like straight power, and it felt really nice actually with the supercharger. I don't remember what the supercharger, the one I reviewed, had on it. But that was, something I had considered doing to my BRZ if I would have been able to keep it, was to probably supercharge it someday to have a little bit more power. And Goth Rocker says only doctors and lawyers can really afford Porsche, so expensive to maintain. Yeah, they are very expensive, and also, expensive to maintain. My buddy, for what it's worth, is an engineer, and he's able to afford one that way. But it's definitely a brand for those wealthier individuals for sure. But man, it's sweet if you can afford them, because they're awesome. New Media says there's a massive push for NFTs. It seems like it's a money laundering scheme. I think the same thing. It just seems like it's, especially the like super like $1 million ones, that totally seems like a money laundering thing. The lower ones, though, I don't know. I mean, again, it's one of those things. Everyone has different likes and interests, so who am I to say whether it's worthwhile? So that's why I'll see if it's something people want. But I do not get all the hype around it, but it's just kind of funny how everyone is talking about them, and it's kind of funny. Shifty Super Production says, I heard there's a new Bullet movie in development. Yeah, I was very excited when I read that a couple of days ago. Made me even more excited about having my Bullet. So I am very excited about that, especially Steven Spielberg being behind it, but also the McQueen family being behind it, which means hopefully it's going to be a properly good tribute to the original. It's not going to be a sequel. It's just going to be, a new story, they're saying. So whether it picks up right after, Bullet was, taking place, of, set in 1968 and all that kind of stuff, would be cool. But if it's something, totally different, that would be awesome as well. We'll have to see. But I'm very excited for that. Obviously, I'm very biased, so I'll probably love it no matter how, good or bad it is. But I have high hopes for it. I mean, I feel like Steven Spielberg doesn't do crap. And also, the McQueens will ensure that it's, doing their father justice. So we'll see, but I'm very excited about that. And I will volunteer my Bullet for any non-abusive stunt work if they would like any help. It'd be very cool if they actually set it in modern times somehow and use the new one in a chase. That'd be a dream, but I'm sure it'll probably be set in the 60s. That'd be my guess. Merc7 says, when are you going to review more high-end cars? Maybe some of the new Porsches like the 911 GTS. Porsche in particular, I would love to do, just because they do have some stuff that's, a little bit more affordable with the Cayman and the Boxster and all that. But typically the reason why I avoid high-end cars is because they don't get views. The Ferrari 458, Spider video that I put out last summer, I love that. I mean, I had a hilarious reaction. The reaction actually was one of my better ones, because that was the first reel I posted on Instagram, and it's like 1 million views on that reel. All my other reels have done terrible, but that one somehow got 1 million views. So like, people liked the reaction on Instagram, but the video did terrible on YouTube. And so I kind of just use views to guide what I do, and that's why I'm doing less crossovers this year. That's why I'm really shunning anything that's not too sporty these days. And then as far as the high-end stuff, it's not relatable. That's another problem. People just don't care. I mean, they don't, if it's something like, we just had, someone else commenting that, Porsches are only affordable if you're a doctor or a lawyer. How many of my viewers are doctors or lawyers? Probably, a fairly small amount. I feel like this channel was built on affordable enthusiast vehicles. And so it's just, it just seems like if it's not relatable, then it's not worth filming. I would love to. I mean, I have friends that own exotic cars. My one buddy has a couple Lamborghinis, has a couple Ferraris, a Bentley, all kinds of stuff that I could go over to his house tomorrow and review all of those. And I would personally love to, you know, from a selfish standpoint, but I just have to be smart with my time. And if I know that you guys aren't going to care if I'm rolling around in a, you know, $300,000 Lamborghini, then like, you know, it's just not smart from a business standpoint to do it. So that's why if the views were better, I would totally do more. But it's not even just like that one last year. I mean, the McLaren videos that I've done, I did the 720S, I did the 570S Spider. Those also, you know, didn't do too great. The Rolls Royce videos that I do usually don't do very well. Bentleys that I've done in the past haven't done too great. I mean, they're not the worst. It's certainly better views than like a minivan review or something, but you know, I can go out and film, you know, like the Civic Si, you know, that got 50,000 views in a month or so versus, you know, the Ferrari video will probably take another 5 years to get up to 50,000 views. So, so that's the reason why I would love to. And it's something I could certainly do more of if people actually showed that they were interested. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So that's why I do what I do. I film stuff that I know you guys want to see. Edgar, thank you so much for the question. He says, I'm planning to get a new car. What's a better car? 2017 Hyundai Veloster Turbo or 2017 Hyundai Elantra Sport? What's your thoughts? So the 17 Veloster, was that the, I can't remember if that was the first gen or the second gen. I'm a little foggy on the years. I believe 2018 was the first year of the new Veloster Turbo. So if we're talking previous gen, personally, I would say the Elantra Sport's probably a little bit nicer inside, you know, from that standpoint. I mean, performance-wise, they're going to be very, very similar. So, you know, I think between those two, I mean, you can't go wrong with either one. It really comes down to how much practicality you want. You know, with the Veloster obviously having a little bit less practicality. But yeah, I think either one you can't really go wrong with. Honestly, you still have the great, you know, Hyundai, you know, their long warranty if you get one that's, you know, certified pre-owned. And they're both really fun cars. So I think between those two, it's kind of a toss-up in my mind. It just comes down to, you know, what you prefer personally. Sorry, that doesn't probably help very much, but that's my thoughts on it. But I see we have a couple of super chats here. So Alfred, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, hope all is well. The 1989 Ford Probe GT and 96 Probe GT are still up for review for you this year. I hope COVID concerns and the time permits. If you're still interested, stay well, man. I appreciate the offer. I'm still definitely planning to hopefully meet up with you to review that this year. Might be a little bit later on towards the year because I'm going to focus on, I am going to be doing more privately owned, you know, reviews this year. That's one of the things I announced a couple of months back, but I'm going to try and work from the closest to me and work my way out. So I'm going to get some of the ones that are a little bit closer to me first, film some of those, and then I will make my way, you know, towards your area and do your vehicles as well. Because I think those are both very cool cars that didn't get enough love, and it's also kind of a niche thing that people probably don't see very often. And so I think that's definitely going to be a cool one to do. And so I definitely plan to do them. But thank you again for the super chat. And yeah, I'll definitely be in touch later this year. And Stephen Rapp, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I finally purchased Land Cruiser 2021 Midnight Black Metallic Heritage Edition. I know you guys were tough on it in the review. Has a bunch of features. Question, what's the deal with stopping Auto Crash Notify 3G? I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're talking about, does it do like the auto connecting to like emergency services if you crash, something like that? I think that's something you could definitely probably enable, unless it's just too old of a infotainment software to do that. I'm not sure. I wish I had a better answer for you there. You can definitely follow up with an email and I can look into that later on, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. But thank you very much for the super chat. And please, yeah, I will try and look into that and get you an answer once I can kind of do a little bit of research on that. New Media, though, is also saying that people buying higher end cars don't need a review. They already know what they're buying. The people watching reviews are the people buying more affordable vehicles. And that's very, very true. I mean, especially with my channel, I'm trying to do consumer advice stuff, not really entertainment stuff. I actually got a long email a couple of weeks ago from someone who like wishes I did more entertaining videos and less informative videos. And I've always, the passion that I've had with the channel is to just do stuff that helps people find cars that they're going to love. And I know that an exotic review could potentially do that, but like you mentioned, most of those people, if you want the newest Lamborghini, you want the newest Lamborghini. What I say about it doesn't matter, one bit to you. So, I think that's also why. I mean, I get that it's a fun thing for people who can't afford it, but a lot of people just, don't care. And it's just, just unrelatable. But, oh, Smitty says he thinks referring to how 3G is getting shut down. Yeah, I heard that 3G was getting shut down for some carriers and stuff. I'm not sure how that works with the auto notify thing though, but yeah, I'll have to look into that though. Garrett says, thank you for still doing weekly updates. I've been watching every Friday since 2014. It's my Friday night tradition. And thank you for making a different channel or something. But anyway, I'm good with it. I just appreciate the, 10,000 or so of you that, tune in every week to that. And I'm just grateful for that. And I also I have a natural curiosity. I love following car news and just following the market and, what car companies are doing. And so, if it was something I hated doing, I would probably be a lot less likely to keep doing it. But and I also just love how many of you really enjoy it as well and make it your tradition. So many people say that same thing, that it's their Friday tradition. They, watch it with dinner, they watch it, on Saturday mornings or whatever the case might be. And it's just really cool. And so I'm glad that, you guys enjoy that. And again, thanks for watching it. K Cav says, I give 0 F's about a Lamborghini review. Why would I watch that? It's fast and loud and sexy. Okay, cool story, bro. Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. Again, everyone likes something different, but yeah, it's just what I've seen of my views for sure is, people, I have 1 million views on a 350Z video from, 10 years ago, but my Lamborghini I reviewed 10 years ago, only has, I don't know, a couple 100,000 views or something. So it's clear there's a preference there. Stephen Rapp, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, if you had to sell a GT 500 or a C8, both 2020, what would you sell? 500 has 1,000 miles, C8 has less. If you had to sell one of them, I mean, personally, I would probably, I guess it depends on what other cars you have. If those are your only 2 sports cars, you're trying to decide which one to keep, it would just come down to what you use it for. I think that the GT500 is a little bit more practical, a little more comfortable. It's a little bit easier to live with just from getting in and out of it and those types of things. So I also think the GT500 is a little more exciting than a C8. The regular C8, I still wish the red line was higher. I wish it had a little bit more playfulness to it. It's a fantastic car, but personally, I think the GT500 is a little more crazy, and I like crazy when it comes to cars. So I think I would probably sell the C8 if it was between those two. Or option 3, I'll be devil's advocate, sell both of them, order a Z06, the new one, and then you have kind of the best of both worlds. You have crazy, you have all the great C8 qualities while still having an insanely better engine than the regular C8. And that might be what I would do if I was in your predicament, honestly, but that's probably not helpful. So for your original question, I'd say keep the GT500 personally. Luco, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, my 18 RAV4 is my first vehicle with adaptive cruise control. I will never go back to regular cruise control. I didn't realize what I was missing. Yeah, that's a really nice feature, especially on road trips. It's so nice, and it's a relaxed environment when, you don't have a bunch of cars breathing down your neck and stuff, because some adaptive cruise systems aren't super quick with, kicking up the speed whenever you're changing lanes and stuff like that. But it is nice for sure when you're on a longer drive and stuff. And that's the slippery slope with nice features like that. Like it's like, people don't realize what they're missing until they have it. And then it's like, like a lot of people like, well, I don't need heated seats. Why do I need heated seats? And then you have a vehicle in the winter with heated seats. And then you're like, I never want to go without heated seats. And it's the slippery slope of, now, like, I'm spoiled with having cold seats, and it's like, oh, I really like always want to have cold seats. And like with Beth, for example, she loves the panoramic roof in her C300. And so now, like with her next car, like whatever we get, like it has to have a panoramic roof because we love it. And especially now our daughter loves looking out of that glass roof since she's in a rear facing seat. And so that's something that if we had never had it before, we'd probably be having an easier decision. But, now that we must have a panoramic roof, that is something that's really hard to, give up. And, so now that's really limiting what you can, kind of settle for, which is always dangerous because then you're just constantly trying to push yourself higher and, going for those more expensive cars. Um, Smitty says the C6 is freaking awesome. That's another thing people are talking about. Oh, okay. So Grayson has a question here about 2023 Nissan Z or C6 Vet is a better value. Yeah, C6 Vet is a fantastic value. And honestly, even I'd say a C7. I don't know. I haven't looked at them recently since the insane, market stuff. But I mean, especially right when the C8s first came out, C7, I would have shouted it from the rooftops. That was the used like value thing out the wazoo. I mean, that was like the best deal you could possibly get to have something with a manual transmission of naturally aspirated V8, that much power, that much handling. And they were going for what? I think there were some in the mid 30s for still a nice C7. The C6 is also, yeah, still a fantastic value, but at least with the C70, a little bit newer technology and stuff, which I know is easy to upgrade in the C6 thanks to the double DIN kind of setup for the infotainment and stuff. But, that also comes down to what you value. Now, if you're just talking about the fastest thing possible, obviously, I would say probably the C6 Vet. I personally would probably go for the Z, though, if you like modern technology and modern safety, all those types of things, but I know not everyone cares about safety as much as I do, but, for that reason, I usually prefer some newer stuff, but the C6 is an awesome performance value for sure. So other questions here. Swank says, do you think the Integra will be getting all-wheel drive? I don't think so. I saw that report and I didn't talk about it deliberately in the weekly update because I think that it's not credible. And I try and really filter out credible stories for the weekly updates. And it just doesn't sound credible. It also doesn't sound from like what I know about Honda's setup as far as, how things mash together, like there's no other vehicle that's going to most likely be using that 1.5T that has the super handling all-wheel drive system, I don't think, at least in any kind of car-based thing. So from a packaging standpoint, it would probably be tough. And then that would also almost certainly mean there's no manual if they do have super handling all-wheel drive as an option. That would be an automatic only proposition, which waters it down from a performance standpoint for a lot of people as well. So I'd say best case scenario, if there is an Integra with all-wheel drive, it will be automatic only, and all the manual transmission cars you're seeing run around are definitely front-wheel drive for sure, because they have no parts bin stuff to pair up a manual with all-wheel drive within Honda, and I don't think they're going to start for the Integra, especially with everything going electric. Anything that's gas-powered and manual transmission these days, I don't think anyone's going to be, pulling out all the stops with a huge budget to do some radical new powertrain setup, considering all this stuff has, a 5-year lifespan at best before it's all taken over by EVs for most of these companies. So yeah, I wouldn't count on anything, as far as a manual all-wheel drive. And I really don't think all-wheel drive is going to happen for the Integra, but I could be wrong. But that report just didn't seem super legit to me. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, since there's a lot of skateboard platforms, what old car body would you want to see fitted? Me, it's old school JDMs, 240Z, first gen Celica, etc. Yeah, stuff like that would be great. Since I'm a huge fan of classic cars, that would be another fun thing of just, and there's actually been some of that already, people throwing Tesla motors in original Volkswagen Beetles and stuff like that. But I think that's really the cool thing that, kind of Volkswagen was putting out a couple of years back with their dune buggy thing that was electric, is that they were like, hey, we can just literally sell a skateboard platform to anybody and you can have whatever you want on it. And I honestly think that's what they're doing with the new DeLorean, because they didn't say what specifically they're doing with it. They just said they're using someone else's electric stuff and then they're doing their own unique body. And I think it makes a lot of sense to just buy that Volkswagen platform and just build, these bespoke cars that everyone wants to see, like a new DeLorean, pop it on that Volkswagen thing and you're set, So I think, the DeLorean's probably one of the top ones that I'm excited for. That's going to probably be using one of those skateboard platforms. But otherwise, yeah, all the JDM stuff would be really cool. And yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's just all the classics, seeing all the classic cars, because that also just would relieve a lot of stress with classic cars. Obviously, it removes a lot of the charm as well. But, with those, especially back in the days, like especially stuff that was like pre-60s, you had to worry about like vapor lock, which is just like the car just stopping because of, vapor lock, and it's just, you're not even doing anything wrong. The car could be, still really solid, but it just gets vapor lock and you have your day ruined by being stranded on the side of the road. So I think, that could be a really fun way to enjoy classics in the future, is have the cool styling, have the everything else about it, and then just pop the EV thing into it, and then you never have to worry about it ever breaking down for the most part. And so I think that would kind of be my thing. Is it'd be fun to try out one of those someday. Stratus Edge 2K7 says F-150 Lightning or Silverado EV. I would have to drive both to truly say. I mean, I would just say, the Lightning you can get this year, if you have an order and already, or you're someone who's willing to pay a markup. But, Silverado EV is a couple years out. I don't know. I think Silverado EV is so high in pricing that I think if you're going to go for $100,000 truck like a Silverado EV, you might as well go full crazy and get a Hummer. But if you're going for like one of the cheaper ones down the road, I don't know. We'll have to see, what those cheaper ones look like, since they haven't really detailed those too much yet here as far as what they'll do for the Silverado EV. But I think the Lightning and the F-150 in general is, the number one seller for a reason. I think the Lightning, makes a lot of sense. I love having, the ability to make it a backup power source if the power goes out and all those types of cool things. So I would probably lean towards Lightning, but we'll see what they do with the Silverado EV. RL Mayhem says, I bet you can't wait till this Western PA weather starts improving here in the next couple of months. I've been patiently waiting to pull out my 2015 Mustang GT. Yeah, same here. The Bullet's just sitting on a battery tender in the garage, hasn't moved since December. And I'm excited to get it out here probably next month, although it might wait till April because I have press cars the next month here that I'll have to keep driving. But I'm excited to get the Bullet out. I'm excited to do some road trips in it this year, to meet up and do some car reviews with some of you guys and stuff. And so very excited for the weather. And honestly, it looks like we're going to get an early spring because like today's 45 and next week we got some temperatures in the 40s and the 50s here. So fingers crossed that the warm weather is, here to stay and we don't have any more snow in March. But usually Pittsburgh's full of surprises here. It's like, I think last year, the past couple of years, it's like we had our last snow was actually like the very beginning of May. So it's just crazy. We'll see what happens. But I'm very excited for the warmer weather, just for filming car reviews, if nothing else, because sitting out freezing whenever, it's windy and cold and I'm trying to film with my camera out in the cold, it's miserable. So I'm just honestly excited for it, just so it's a little bit more pleasant to film in. Tu Chang, thank you so much for another super chat. And he says, final question, the Ukraine-Russia situation, how could further similar situations affect the car industry, especially if the next incident is a big car producing country? I think it just really it'll make things, obviously much, much worse. And I kind of even mentioned that with like Fisker in my weekly update here this past week, or they're planning on building the Ocean at Magna Steyr, which is in Austria. Austria obviously is, a good ways over there, and there would have to be a lot of worse things to develop before, we'd have to worry about that factory, for example. But they get some of their parts, I'm sure, from stuff in further Eastern Europe and stuff. So like, if this continues on, like, Magna Steyr also builds the G-Wagon, they also build the Supra. Again, I don't know how many parts they source or how much they rely on stuff from, Eastern Europe there, but we could see some issues there possibly. Obviously, even like Germany relies on a lot of steel from Russia and stuff like that. So you could see German car production have some issues in addition to the already crazy issues we have with the chip stuff going on. So yeah, I think no matter what, it is not going to help the currently, very rough situation. And that could really prolong this whole inflated car market that we're in currently. And that is another thing that I'm really going to be keeping an eye on as well is, everyone's expecting used car prices to come back down here in the next year or so. But there's been some talk recently that, even like car dealers are saying like they're never going to have huge inventories anymore because they don't want to get burned the way they got burned, in 2020. And they also are getting more streamlined with ordering, and more people are getting used to the idea of ordering the car they want instead of having these huge selections on the lot. And if you look at the rest of the world, a lot of other countries don't have these huge lots. This is like a very American thing to be able to just like walk up to your Ford dealer and have 50 different F-150s to pick from. Like that doesn't happen in other countries. And I think that, American car dealers are seeing this and saying like, well, yeah, like, especially if they can keep demand limited, like, then you don't have to give any kind of incentives. You don't have to do anything. So they're saying that like rebates might not really come back very much. Obviously the free market will dictate that and we'll see what happens. But if everyone is, universally like, hey, like you have to order most cars. We might have a few on the lot. We're not cutting any deals because there's only a few of them. And, then that could really, keep things high. And then if you add to that, the supply issues, which kind of force them to do that as well, then, you might have, this thing kind of lasts a lot longer. I was expecting this bubble to pop at some point this year, but it sounds like, at this point, this could probably, these high prices could end up going into 2023. And some conservative estimates are even saying 2024. So for those of you who might be considering, like, should I sell my car before the market pops or anything, like, you might have some time. I mean, it's one of those things you never really know. It's like the stock market. You never know when the perfect time is to buy and sell. But, it seems like things are going to, keep getting worse for a while. And I really hope things get de-escalated in Ukraine. Of course, it's just a terrible situation. Like I mentioned in the weekly update, it's just heartbreaking, and it just sucks all around. And so, hopefully things don't get worse, because if things get worse, I mean, then car industry stuff is going to be the least of our worries. If World War III ends up happening, then it's going to be, people think that the supply issues are bad now. They should go back and look at history. Like World War II, when that happened, like you had no car production. The cars that they stopped producing, 1941 was the end, and you had no new car production until like the very end of 1945 into 1946. You had like 4 years where people were forced to just keep their cars, and that was it. There was no choice. The factories just weren't building cars, and it wasn't just one or two companies. It was everybody. Everyone was just building war stuff. And so, people think they're annoyed they have to wait 6 months for their ordered car to come in. Like, try waiting 4 years and having to keep your car running, however you can do that, because there is nothing else out there, and whatever is used, that's it. There's no more new used cars coming. This is what we have for the next however many years. So again, that's the worst case scenario, but if things don't improve, like I said, things can get a whole lot worse. We're still very fortunate. We're in we have a very privileged position here, especially in the States, but the whole world in general, we're being so modernized with having so much cooperation, having things be as affordable as they are. I know inflation's really bad, but the amount of trade and stuff, it's there's so many good selections as far as cars and everything else. I could go on a whole tangent, but I think that even though things are a little bit tough with the car market right now, it could be a whole lot worse. So I'm still very grateful that we have as much as we have. So Luke O, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I traded in my 2019 Nissan Frontier and got $27,500 for it. I paid $29,800 for it October of 19. Yeah, it is definitely a seller's market. That's for sure. It's crazy. I know. It's like, even, I mean, the Bullet is still worth like 46,000 just as a trade in. I mean, if I sold it privately, I could probably get almost, sticker price for it that I paid, after, 3.5 years here of driving, admittedly only putting 16,000 miles on it. But, it's really crazy. And even it's really nice though, because I mean, for some people, it helps them to get into a nicer car. As long as you can get something at MSRP, you can really improve your situation. And like even my sister, she was leasing a Mazda 3. She had a bunch of equity in it all of a sudden because, even though she had done the normal amount of miles for the lease, they were worth a lot more for her car. So she was able to, buy it out, get that equity, and then roll that into her next car. And now she's in a nicer car as a result, and that kind of helped her financial situation. So as long as you're willing to hunt down an MSRP deal, I think really buyers are winning big time right now with this whole thing. And so, it's just the people that are forced to pay markups, or the people who just, that's all they can find. That's where it's really crappy. But if you're able to buy normal cars that you can find at MSRP still, I think that this is definitely, going to help out the American consumer in general. And so it's great that you're able to get so much for your Frontier there. Newt says, I bought my GTI last July for $19,750 and traded in the other week for $24,000. It's crazy. Yeah. And I mean, we're all coming out ahead, so as annoying as this stuff is, and I know there's inflation and gas is high and there's all these other things, but I mean, people are making good money, flipping cars and stuff. So it's not all bad, even though that's all we ever hear about is the downsides. There's a lot of upside, I think, too. Corvette fan says, have you seen or driven the refresh 2022 RAV4 yet? I haven't. Admittedly, the refresh is pretty mild. I mean, it's just, new headlights, couple new options and paint colors and stuff like that. I don't think they've changed anything mechanically, because I actually sat in on the conference call with Toyota back in the fall whenever they were announcing the new RAV4. And from what I remember, there wasn't anything really new. I may spend some time in one, but that's, again, since that's just a normal crossover, I'm not sure how many people, sorry, I'm going to take a drink, how many people are interested in watching that on the channel. But I may end up in one. We'll see what happens. Just based on the press car situation, I may end up driving one. We'll see. But yeah, but if that's something you would like to see, definitely let me know. And if other people want to see it, I'm certainly open to definitely doing a review on one, because it has been 3 years or so since I did the last RAV4 review. So I'm definitely open to doing another one if someone wants to see that. Max Treya says, hey, Matt, have you ever driven an EJ207 based WRX? Would love to get your opinion on that powertrain. Yeah, it's been a few years. I did the, I think it was an 03 Bug-Eye wagon, probably, I don't know, 5 years ago or so at this point. And it's a lot of fun. That was the thing that got me into WRXs in the first place, was not driving one, but riding in one as a 11-year-old kid whenever they were debuting in 2001 for the 2002 model year. Getting a ride in one. The salesman actually took me and my dad on like a bit of a joyride where the salesman was driving and he knew how to drive. And that as my little 11-year-old brain was just blown by that car. And that was what led me to love them. And so they're fantastic. I love that they're peaky. I love that you really got to, reach in the higher RPMs for that power. I wish the 5-speed was more stout, like everyone does. But aside from that, I love them. I think they're great. And I really think the Bug-Eye WRXs eventually will appreciate big time. I mean, I've seen a few low mileage ones on Bring a Trailer go for pretty good money, but I don't know. I feel like that's one of those like future classics. If you can find a clean one that hasn't been, gone through with mods and stuff, I mean, I think that could be a pretty good collectible as well, because I think that there's going to be more and more appreciation for those as time goes on. But Steven, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, I got 10K more on a 2021 RST Suburban than I bought the Land Cruiser for. There is the Land Cruiser 300 coming to the US. From what I've heard, no, the Land Cruiser isn't coming for the new version. It's only going to be the Lexus LX 600 now, they're calling it, or whatever. I think that's the only one that's coming. They're not bringing the Land Cruiser here, unfortunately, which is a bummer, but they were so close in price. I think from a sales standpoint, the Lexus sold better and stuff as well. So I think I can't blame Toyota for only doing the Lexus over here. And so that's another vehicle, though. While we're talking about the Lexus, that's another one that's going to be a $100,000 SUV that I'll probably not review. It will be available to me, but I don't know how many people care about a $100,000 SUV anymore on my channel, so I'm probably going to skip it. But there's another one. If people do want to see it, let me know, and maybe I'll consider doing it. But I'm probably going to not. I'm really going to try and stick to stuff under $50,000 this year as hard as I possibly can. There will be some stuff that will be over that, but I'm really serious about focusing on cheaper stuff this year to just really be more relatable and, do stuff that I know you guys, want to see a lot more. So that's why I'm doing the used stuff more this year and just the affordable, sporty stuff instead. We have New Media says, I'll have to take you for a ride in my WRX. The EJ205 is the most exciting Subaru motor, in his opinion. The 5-speed is like glass, but they're awesome. Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, I'd love to go for a ride in it someday. That'd be awesome. They're still just one of the coolest cars ever. I mean, I still even have one on my shelf over here that I got years ago. That I've always loved them. They're great. Justin, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, is the first gen Charger sedan with a Hemi a terrible buy, or should I just shoot for a pre-refresh second gen 2012 to 2014? I don't think they're terrible. I mean, that generation of Mopar stuff isn't super reliable, but I don't know. I haven't looked into them recently, but I didn't think they were terrible, because I know the 300Cs, which is the same motor and stuff, those seem to be pretty solid, and people seem to be running those a good long while and stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I know that, they're probably a lot of them are really rough. So I would say if you're going to go for a first gen Charger, make sure you go for one that's been taken care of well and hasn't been beaten and stuff. And that goes for any car. If it's really older like that, you're going to have to make sure you don't find one rough around the edges if you want one reliable. But I'd say, the second gen there, those ones are certainly a little bit nicer on the inside, a little bit more modern and stuff. So, it just kind of depends on, a bunch of different preferences and stuff. But, I think I like that they're a little more performance oriented for the newer ones there. And so obviously I'm of the opinion, usually the newer is the better pick. Also, there's safety improvements that are done with newer generations of vehicles as well, which is something that I, value. But again, I know a lot of people don't care about that, but, if you can go for it, I would say, yeah, probably go for, pre-refresh second gen if you can swing it. And that also is it's just better because they're in the second generation. They're kind of, getting used to building those a little bit more. And so anytime, the car company has more experience building whatever model you're looking at, generally the more reliable it's going to be as well. And that's why now 2022 Challengers and Chargers are super reliable, and they, rank really high with Consumer Reports and stuff, because when you haven't changed anything for 10 years, there's less to break because they've worked out all the kinks. So that's another reason why, usually I'd go for something, a little bit newer. And so the second gen version is probably what I would do. Andrew's asking, do you watch F1? I do not. I really don't have too much time to watch something like an F1 race since it's a little bit longer, especially just being a new dad and stuff. When I watch something, I can't watch it like in the background. I have to be like laser focused because I don't want to ever miss anything. And so that's really hard to do with anything that's longer than a half an hour TV show, honestly. So no, I don't watch F1. I'd like to get into it someday if I had, some extra free time. But yeah, because it seems like it's been pretty exciting here recently. And yeah, but I don't watch any sports at all for that matter. So I don't watch any racing. I don't watch any, football or anything like that. I watched like a quarter of the Super Bowl just for some of the ads, and that was it. But yeah. So other questions here. JT Slick says CTSV third gen versus CT5V Blackwing. Got to go with the Blackwing. That thing is fantastic. It's everything about the previous generations that people loved. Just better, in my opinion. Unless you don't like the superchargers thing and you want something naturally aspirated, but the Blackwing is fantastic. I absolutely love them. If I could afford one, hands down, I would own one. They are amazing. And so, yes, that was an easy one there. CT5V Blackwing. Blue Collar Jose, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what's your take on the EPA pushing car manufacturers to go full EV, since the consumers aren't necessarily the ones interested in EV over gas cars? I mean, I think that, it's hard to speak in generalities because clearly, there are a lot of people that are into EVs, and the EV sector is growing very fast. And I mean, this is shown particularly with Ford here. I mean, look at how they've sold out Lightnings now for the next couple of years. They have over 200,000 pre-orders for the F-150 Lightning. I know in the grand scheme of things, 200,000 orders isn't a whole lot, but that's still a lot of cars. 200,000. I mean, considering they sell, they sell almost 1 million F-150s a year or something. I mean, that's 1/5 of your F-150 production for the electric version. I think is actually better than even Ford was expecting. I mean, that is a really good turnout. And then you factor in all the Teslas and their, rabid fans that are, super loyal to those. And then, the whole EV thing just gaining momentum for whatever reasons it is, whether it's because the cool factor or the green factor or whatever. But there is some momentum, growing there as far as, pushing car companies to do that. I don't really think that's the EPA in particular. I think especially, the EPA, even despite the administration and stuff, regardless of what administration you're talking about, the Europeans have always been stricter with the emission stuff. And so a lot of these decisions you're seeing aren't because of us. We have pretty lax emissions, restrictions. It's, Euro doing the Euro 7 stuff coming in 2025 or 2026 that basically, makes it so hard to do gas engines that trying to do affordable gas stuff is going to be really hard. And so, like Volkswagen, they don't care about what we're doing here in the States. Like they're worried about Euro 7. They're worried about selling their cars in Europe. They're a European car company. That's why Volkswagen's switching to EV. That's why Audi's quit gas development altogether and they're going for EVs, and the whole Volkswagen group eventually will. And same goes for all the other European companies. They're worried about their own little bubble, and their bubble is Euro 7. So that will affect us, by proxy, because we get their stuff here as well, of course. But, it's so there's a lot of factors around the world. It's not just a US thing. And, we could be the holdouts that, stick to gas stuff until, I don't know, the end of time if we want. But, I think you're just going to see that other market forces in other parts of the world are going to influence that. And it's just not going to make sense eventually to sell stuff here in the States that's gas powered, even if we have no emissions rules whatsoever. We could throw out the EPA to get all together and you would still have the EV switch happening, at least in my opinion. So I don't really think that has much of an effect. Obviously it will for the American car companies because they are focused on American stuff primarily. So, maybe we could revert to a world like, we had back in the 60s or something where you had the obscure foreign cars and their EV thing. And then we just have everything V8 powered from Ford, GM, and Dodge or something. That would be the only way you could ever see things resisting the EV thing possibly. But that also doesn't make sense because those, companies also need to sell in other parts of the world and they want to, reduce their costs as well. And so, like Ford, for example, with the Mach-E. The Mach-E, they sell 2/3 of them outside of America. The Mach-E, they care about how Americans like it, but we're not the target consumer for the Mach-E. They sell way more of them in the rest of the world. And, so yeah, 2/3, I think, don't quote my numbers, but I think about 2/3 of Mach-E production goes overseas immediately. They're not for the States. So like, there's also some of that kind of stuff, factoring in as well. So, even American car companies can only be so insulated before they have to worry about Euro 7 and all those types of things as well. So, there's a lot of factors contributing to the EV thing. And I could probably go on an hour-long tangent about that, but it's not just a US thing. This is stuff that the whole world has decided. And there's been hundreds of billions of dollars put into this already. I don't think there is any going back. If this whole thing fails with this EV transition, it'll basically just completely bankrupt almost every car company in the world. And I don't know what that would look like, with everyone being bankrupt, but you'd basically, it'd be pretty crazy. I just don't think it's going to happen. There could be some switch, like I kind of talked about with the hydrogen V8, thing that Yamaha and Toyota are working on in the past weekly update. There's a chance that, down the road, we do EVs as the Band-Aid for the next 10 or 20 years. And then, Japan keeps working on the hydrogen thing and they find some way to have hydrogen powered internal combustion engines. And then that could bring things back. And we kind of have a curve like we had, with things being crazy in the 50s and the 60s with the muscle cars. And then, we have the 70s, we have to have good fuel economy. 70s and 80s, everything is the dark ages. And then, 90s comes back and then you're able to have all this crazy stuff again for the next 30 years. Maybe we have something like that where the next 20 years is EV and then hydrogen takes over and we have screaming hydrogen V8 engines that are still totally clean. And that's our reality in 2050 or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, long tangent, but I think the EVs are inevitable. And Justin, thank you so much for the super chat as well, weighing in on this, saying, they're inevitable. At best, we'll have internal combustion with hybrid assistance. Yeah, but EVs are going to be performance capable. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, so many enthusiasts are so obsessed with, beating someone at a red light. And it's like, if you're obsessed with that, just go buy a Tesla Model 3 today. You'll smoke basically everybody. And, it's the end of story. It's so, I think there will definitely be people who, hang on to the internal combustion stuff because it's fun, not because it's fast. Same as, you have people that hang on to the manuals for that same reason. It's about the experience and you'll have some of that. And maybe the e-fuels here in the next, 5 years or so will be able to, help out with keeping some of those vehicles around a lot longer. But I think as far as mainstream mass people movers, it's going to be EVs for sure. But Anyway, thank you so much, Justin, also for your super chat. Goth says, Matt, you're forgetting we now have gasoline that does not give off any carbon emissions, so the EV is not needed, in my opinion. Plus, most electricity is from coal power, and the U.S. is afraid of nuclear. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole thing because I know that kind of borders on political stuff, and I know everyone has different opinions about the climate and stuff, and I try very hard to stay out of all that stuff, even though I know it's getting harder and harder to do with the weekly updates being, more and more EV stuff. So I don't really want to get into the whole debate as far as all that kind of stuff goes. But yeah, I'll just leave that because yeah, I don't want to get into that, unfortunately. But Newt says, I think we'll see hybrids succeed further before EVs truly take off. Once the battery technology can outdo hybrid ranges, then we'll see massive spike in EVs. Yeah, I mean, I think, that's what Toyota's doing. Toyota has this very common sense approach of, what about the person in the middle of Kansas that doesn't have a charging station anywhere near them or something like that? Like there's a lot of situations. I mean, apartment dwellers, there's a lot of situations where EVs make zero sense currently. And I totally get that. And so for those people, Toyota's going to have their answer for them with hybrids for a long time to come. I think that's why I truly think the RAV4 Prime could change the world if Toyota would actually build enough of them, because you have enough electric range for most people in their real world living daily driving circumstances, whether or not they admit it or not. Most people don't drive more than 30 or 40 miles a day. And so I think that those plug-in hybrids that have those higher electric ranges could basically electrify most people's daily commutes 100% of the time. And then, for people who still just want that gas engine for when they want to drive across the country at the drop of a hat, like everyone, wants to do, or if you're in someone, it's in the rural areas and you need to have a very high range, the plug-in hybrids are great for that. And I think makes a lot of sense what Toyota's doing. And I think, they're now ramping up the EV stuff as well, because they see that that's growing faster than I think even they expected it to. And so they're going to have something for everybody. And I think that's the way to go, is give people the choices. I mean, I'm not saying everyone should have an EV by any means or anything. I think that we'll see what the market decides, but clearly there's a lot of hype for EVs. And so, I think Toyota will be a great guinea pig of, okay, let's give everyone all the options instead of being like a GM or someone being like, well, this is our deadline. Like Toyota's like, okay, well, here we go. You have your gas, you have your hybrid, you have your plug-in hybrid, and you have your EVs. Here's your picks. We try to make them all affordable. You do the math as far as which one's cheaper for you to actually live with, which makes the most sense for your lifestyle, and let the market dictate like what happens from that standpoint. And that's fine. Europe and stuff, like I said, will influence that because of their restrictions. But, as far as the States goes, I think that makes sense. And we'll let the market, decide kind of what's going to, pan out there. But especially with gas prices being as high as they are, I think that's another thing that's really driving people to EVs, and just the fact that EVs are more affordable to run. And so for a lot of people, that's really appealing these days with everything else getting more and more expensive. If they can save, $100 a month on gas or something, they're going to be very excited about that. So we'll see. But Blue Collar Jose, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, do you think that people would be inclined to convert their ICE cars into EV instead of engine swaps, just go electric conversion? I think for the enthusiast market, there's some people that are certainly into that kind of thing. And I think there's going to be more of that definitely growing for sure as the years go on. We're seeing more and more of that at SEMA, by the way. That's something that kind of gives you a good idea of like what people are currently thinking about, doing. There's been a lot of those e-crate things. You can now buy like the Mach-E's powertrain as a drop-in thing, and kind of do those types of things. There's like the e-Copo Camaro, same kind of deal where you can drop in an EV powertrain there, and have that stuff. I think there's going to be some of that in the enthusiast world for sure, especially because it's just way faster too. I mean, from a drag racing standpoint, I mean, the EV is going to be far superior in most cases. So I think there could be a switch, even in that regard as well. But I think as far as, mainstream consumers, obviously, that's going to be way above and beyond what someone's willing to do with their car. So, I don't think there's going to be any of that from a mass adoption standpoint, but certainly from an enthusiast standpoint, I think that's something that's going to be happening more and more. So Blackout 5.0 fan says, hi, Matt. I know that you like modern tech, but do you mind if I can ask what modern tech from newer cars do you not like / annoys you? That's a good question. Modern tech. I mean, I'm not like, I enjoy some of the safety tech, but obviously I'm someone who enjoys driving my own car and, not having very much assistance. So for me, it's mostly the safety tech stuff, especially since we're kind of in the early days of the, automated assistance, where it's not super polished for most companies. Everyone's figuring this out and improving it year after year. So that means that we're kind of in an iffy reliability standpoint as far as that stuff goes. And so that's one of the things I talk about in all my new reviews is, how well does the lane keeping assist system work? Is it annoying? And you have, different companies trying to figure out how to best implement those alerts and, when to alert people, when not to alert people, how much attention is required, should we monitor the driver, should we not? There's all these things everyone's trying to figure out, and everyone has different opinions from a manufacturing standpoint as well as, from a consumer standpoint with all that. And so, there's, I think those are the main things that stand out to me, that if I'm annoyed about a car that I'm driving, like, for example, a press car I'm driving for a week, usually that's like one of the top things that annoys me is, it's either giving me false alerts or it's way too sensitive or overreactive, even on its lower setting and stuff, so I think that's probably the thing that annoys me the most. Because, as much as, it's nice having adaptive cruise and stuff like that, I'm still the guy, I like driving myself and doing everything myself because I just like being fully engaged. But, I know that's, again, just a very small enthusiast niche of people that like that. So I think, it's going to be definitely a lot of help with having all that newer tech and stuff for the average commuter, but that's the stuff that annoys me the most. Robert says, "Hi, Matt, are you anti-Tesla?" I'm not anti-Tesla. Tesla, I think, is a very... I mean, they're the main reason why EVs are as popular as they are today, because they made them cool. They were dorky cars for the most part before Tesla came onto the scene. Now they have a cool factor, and maybe the other car companies would have eventually made cool enough stuff to change people's perception, but it's really hard to change people's perception. And I think Tesla did that in a unique way that only Tesla could have, with, Musk being very eccentric and, just doing the crazy things that they have done. And I think that that's, their impact on the car industry is undisputable, and it's changed it, I think, in a lot of ways for the better. And so, I'm definitely not anti-Tesla. I mean, Elon Musk, I could get into a whole thing about him, but I won't. But, as far as Tesla itself goes, I think they're solid cars. I think that they have the best supercharger network still out there by far, and the most reliable, easiest to use charging network. They have some of the best ranges out of any electric car still. There's some things I don't like about them for sure, and you can watch my Tesla reviews if you want to hear about that. But I think that they're really solid cars, for the most part. I'm definitely not anti-Tesla. I'm anti-Tesla autopilot, or at least the full self-driving part of that. And I'm, not into those types of things since they're a little less responsible with the way they do that. But yeah, I think they're solid cars. Justin, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, "What car are you dying most to review?" Well, this year, I think the ones I'm most excited to review are the new Nissan Z, the GR Corolla. Those are probably my top two that I'm most excited about. The STI, if it comes out before the end of this year, we'll see. It might be something like early next year, but that would be another one I'm very excited about. Those are probably the top ones because, again, I'm also very passionate about the affordable performance stuff as well. So I think that's the stuff that, really gets me excited. I mean, I think also, other stuff that I'm excited or I would like to review is like, a lot of the exotics I wish I could review. Like, I'd love to review the new Aston Martins, their whole range. I'm a huge fan of. There's some of those types of things that I'd love to review. But again, I probably will not, even if I had the opportunity, just because, they don't get the views here on this channel. But I think, Z and GR Corolla are going to be the big ones this year. And we'll see about anything else. But I think those are the top two for sure. I'm also really excited for the new Mustang. If that does show up this year, that might be next year, though. We'll see. That would be another one I'd be pretty excited about, just, from a curiosity standpoint. American Patriot says, "In your estimation, how much longer do you think the dealership markets will be around?" The way they're acting these days, they're really trying to push themselves into extinction because, I mean, it's just, I don't know who likes dealerships these days with how they're just, preying on everybody who's willing to pay over a sticker and stuff. But, I think that the way at least from my understanding, the way the laws are set up here in the States, it is very hard to get rid of the dealership thing. They're just so walled in from a legal standpoint that I would love to see, dealerships go away for the most part. So at least the bad ones. I know there's some good ones out there, but I'm just nothing makes my blood boil more in the car world, at least, than dealer markups and dealers being crappy about that stuff. So I would love to see, that'll be a thing of the past, but I think dealerships are going to stick around for a long time, at least until, I think they're always going to stick around for the legacy car companies. I think every new thing coming is going to follow Tesla's lead. That's another area where Tesla pioneered, of just throwing out the dealership model altogether. And I think all these new companies you're seeing are going to, skip out on the dealer thing because they know that it's a terrible model. And so, I think that'll eventually make dealers a little less prominent if those new car companies do gain market share. But aside from that, I think, we'll see dealerships still for a long, long time to come. Slow M40i says, are you excited for the Raptor R and how it would compete with the TRX? I mean, right now it's all kind of just speculation. I think, it's a pretty safe bet it'll be using, the GT500 motor, but how much power it makes and stuff, we'll have to see. As far as how it competes with TRX, I'm worried about the price because I mean, as I said in my Raptor review, if you watched my regular Raptor review a couple of months ago, I mean, they're already close to TRX pricing. And for a couple $1,000s more, I'd much rather have 700 horsepower over, 450 or whatever for the F-150 Raptor. So, if the Raptor R is, starting at 10 grand over a TRX or something, I think that Dodge is going to be laughing all the way to the bank because they'll just keep selling TRXs as fast as they can build them. But, there will be the Ford diehards who, really like the Raptor's suspension setup a little bit better. And if they keep that going and have the power, there'll be certainly some fans that will go for it, but I'm sure they'll sell everyone that they build. But I think from a competition standpoint, as a reviewer, it will be more than the TRX almost certainly. And for that reason, I will probably prefer the TRX unless the Raptor R is way more power, way better in some other way that I can't imagine currently. But I feel like it's an uphill battle for the Raptor R in my mind, but we'll see what happens. I'm always open-minded and objective. We'll see what they do with it, but we'll see. Steven, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, are they building 2022 Broncos as my brother has one ordered, but dealer hides? So there was a story, I think this past week or two about, Broncos, a bunch of them. I mean, not a bunch, I should say probably hundreds or thousands of them are sitting in lots, just waiting for chips. And so there's some issues there. So they're building them, I think, and then just kind of stash them away until the chips finally show up. But they are trying their hardest. It's just, they had their other production issues first with the hard tops and stuff, and now there's the chip stuff again. So they're trying to, build them, but it's a struggle. And so unfortunately the dealers are, preying on that. And it's a bummer. But New Media says, we absolutely refuse to mark up our prices. Shame on all the dealers that mark up. It's nice to see manufacturers making an attempt to reduce dealer markup. Yeah, that's true. And I'm very glad that Ford and GM are taking a stand against that and kind of cutting allocations on those dealers. But I think also, I think Ford mentioned, they said only 10% of their dealers are doing markups. It's got to be way more than 10%. So I'm not sure what they consider markups, or if they're talking about a certain price level before it's like a bad markup in their opinion, or what. Because I think most dealers are way over. It's way more than 10% of dealers in the Ford network, at least. I think they're doing markups. But it's awesome that Strictly Car Store isn't doing any markups though, Newt. That's great. I know Southwark Mitsubishi, where my buddy has, I don't think they're doing markups either. And there's I know there are a lot of good dealers. The one dealer that I'm in talks with for one of the potential new family vehicles that Beth and I are looking at, all the vehicles we're looking at are pretty in-demand vehicles, and I've located MSRP dealers for all the vehicles that we're considering here. So there are some out there for sure. It just means they're usually not in your backyard. You got to travel, you got to do a road trip. But I've bought 3 out of my last 4 cars out of state, so I have no problem doing a road trip to buy a car. So, if you're someone who's able to have that flexibility to do a road trip, put your search radius out to 500 miles and start calling, and, you'll find someone who'll give you something at MSRP for sure. Miguel, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, thinking of a mild project car around 15 grand, something like a Gen 2 Mazda Speed 3 or a ninth gen is something like that. Any suggestions? Good project car, 15 grand. I would say, I mean, obviously it depends on what you're going for. So I'm guessing if you're looking at the Mazda Speed 3, then you're kind of into front wheel drive stuff as far as a project car. And so, I mean, Mazda Speed 3s are fun. I've driven, the second gen version. That obviously if you're doing, project car stuff to it, then you're going to get rid of the boost limiter that it has in first gear, which really killed a lot of the fun in my review. But so, without that limiter, it probably would have been a hilarious amount of fun with wheel spin and stuff. Other project cars, though, I mean, yeah, it really depends on what you're, wanting. I think one of my dream project cars would be to put a V8 in a BRZ, and I'm sure you could probably find a rough BRZ for under 15 grand, and find, an LS, motor or, something like that for, a few $1,000 and maybe do something like that. It would be hilarious fun in my opinion. But, if you're into front wheel drive stuff, that's totally fine too. But that's the only other thing, because that's like one of my go-to project cars is just doing something like that. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. I just keep thinking of all the things that I would do. Like, I'd love to do like an STI motor in a Subaru Baja, something like that. You could probably do for about 15 grand or less. What else? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as front wheel drive stuff too, I think it'd be really fun to do something like a really built Civic Si, like, really building out the motor, and because those motors just scream, and I'm sure with a bunch of breathing mods and stuff, that could be, really fun car as well as far as front wheel drive stuff goes. I also think Fiesta ST is a really fun platform for a project car as well. And, just the really fun lightweight handling, a little bit smaller than the Mazda Speed 3 as well, but you still have the hatch practicality and stuff. That could be another fun one for sure. So yeah, a bunch of good options. You can definitely send me an email if you want to give a little more context, and I can maybe work through some better suggestions for you than just going through my dream list of project cars and stuff. So I'm sorry, I probably didn't do the best job answering that, but yeah, definitely send me an email if you'd like, and we can, I can kind of go through more with you if you want. Blue Collar Jose, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, what family cars are you guys looking at? I haven't revealed which cars we're considering, because a few of them will require some explaining if we go for them, and it's going to be a whole long thing. So I can't get into it. So I will say, what can I say about it without giving away stuff? Obviously, okay, so I can say we are looking at SUVs because we want something that is a little more practical, a little more spacious for, being a family vehicle. So everything that we're looking at is an SUV. And I would say everything that we are looking at is over $50,000, but right around the $50,000 price point is basically where we're at. And yeah, that's probably the most specific I can get so far, is about 50 grand luxury kind of SUV kind of thing is kind of the idea. There's an outside chance it won't be something that's 50 grand depending on stuff. We'll see what happens, but that's about the most that I can say as far as that. So hopefully at least answered your question partially. All will be revealed once I can kind of talk through it all, and once we actually know what we're getting, because we have to figure out. You said no minivans. Yes, no minivans for sure. Beth is staunchly opposed to minivans. I'm not a huge fan of them either, but she will never drive a minivan. So yeah, no worries there. New Media is asking if it's German. Yeah, I can't comment on that. Obviously, Beth is a big Mercedes fan, so there is German stuff we're considering, but that's not all we're considering this time around. We're considering some other stuff. She has opened up to other brands, so we will see what happens here. Goth Rocker says, hoping we were getting a Kia Stinger as a family ride. If it were me, that would be one of the ones that I would consider. But Beth does drive the vehicle more than I probably will, or at least the same amount that I would. So it also be something she wants to drive, and she wants to sit up a little bit higher and just have something that's a little more comfortable. The Kia Stinger is also, it is a very good family ride from a hatch standpoint, but the roof really kind of cuts down there. I noticed this whenever because I was actually really trying to consider it whenever we had the Stinger GT line here for the 2022 one that I reviewed back in the fall. And I put the car seat in the back of it, and it's good, except that the roof does cut down a little bit. And so getting our daughter in and out is a little tricky. You really got to angle her so she's not bopping her head on the roof since it's kind of low. So that is one of the nice things about SUVs. I mean, I'm not like a huge SUV lover either. I much prefer sedans and stuff. So yeah, but it's, it's just trying to compromise, and we're trying to find something we're both going to like. And so everything that we have decided on, as far as our top picks, they're all vehicles that I'm also excited about, and stuff that she can be excited about as well. Some more than others. We'll see again how this all plays out, because I still am in just as much. It's just as much of a mystery to me as it is for you guys, because there's a lot of moving parts still. We got to see what ends up happening here. So it'll be very fun to kind of reveal everything once we finally do figure out what happens. But yeah. Newt Media says, considering you are buying out the lease, tells me you have plenty of options. Good decision on that. Companies are screwing people over on leases upon trade-in. Yeah, I mean, honestly, unless you're way over the miles or there's some other reason, I feel like every single person would be better off buying out their lease whenever it's up here with this way it's going right now. Because I think I think Beth's C300 is, I think the lease buyout was something around like 34 grand, and it's currently worth like, I think 37 or 38 on trade-in, and that's just trade-in if I didn't want to bother selling it myself, which also might be on the table as well, since it's a very rare spec with her C300. But regardless, if you're willing, it is a headache. It is a pain in the butt to go through, refinancing to, buy it out. And then you got to add, you kind of hit your credit twice. So you have to then go and finance your next vehicle. So you're doing like double financing within a couple of months. So it's not great from that standpoint. If, your credit score is a little on the low side, that doesn't help it. But, aside from that, it seems like it definitely makes sense for everyone to buy out their lease. And it's really nice. I actually called Mercedes to verify, because some companies are changing to, not let you buy out the lease. And Mercedes doesn't have any restrictions aside from the fact that Mercedes will not let you trade it in on another competing brand. You can trade it in for another Mercedes and they'll handle it all that way. But otherwise, if I want to keep the equity myself, I either have to stick with a Mercedes or I have to buy it out myself and then sell it, once it's my own car. So that's why we're buying it out, because, even though there's some Mercedes stuff potentially in the running, there's a lot of other things that aren't Mercedes as well that we're considering. So that's why we're, looking at, just buying it out instead. But Fastline says, how do you feel about Chevrolet getting rid of all sedans? It's a bummer. It's definitely, the end of an era, and it's something that, it's just, kind of an old school thing of like the Malibu is such a historic name, and that going away is going to be really sad. But the world is changing, and, people's preferences are changing. People don't want sedans anymore for the most part. Obviously there's a lot to do, but, they build what people buy. And so, just the way it goes. So other questions here. Goth says, yeah, I watched your reviews on the Stinger. I thought that was a good fit, but I understand many American women love the SUVs. I just like cars more. No matter what, SUV is still a box on wheels. I understand that. Yeah. I mean, but you look at all the newer stuff out there these days. I mean, there's a lot of really very impressive handling, very, dynamic SUVs out there. I know there's a lot of subjective stuff as far as styling and stuff goes, but I think that a lot of them are very impressive driving cars. And so, yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with all that. But yeah, I don't think there's no way that a sedan will work out, with everything we're considering and stuff. So it'll all just be an SUV for sure. And Goth says Mazda's SUVs are very impressive. Funny you mentioned the Mazda SUVs. My sister actually just bought a CX-5 this week of 2022, and she loves it. And I still think that is hands down, if you're looking for an affordable mainstream crossover, CX-5 all day long, every day is the best buy you can get, I think, currently. They drive the best. They're some of the most reliable. They, are some of the nicest inside, as long as you can deal with not having a touchscreen. That's the only drawback. Otherwise, they're fantastic. And they're great vehicles. So we have Ahmad says, what do you think about older automatics? Looking at an auto E30. It's a personal preference thing. I guess it comes down to what you are used to. You know, if you're used to something super quick, super snappy, or you're used to a manual, you might be let down by older automatics for sure. But if you know you've had older automatics and you're used to older automatics, then it's one of those things that doesn't really bother as many people. But it was funny. I'll be talking about this. I had a Forerunner last week as the press vehicle, and I'll be posting that video here probably in a month or so. That one's going to kind of put on the back burner a little bit because it probably won't get a ton of views. But that one had a 5-speed automatic. And I think that might be the only car on the market that still has a 5-speed automatic, but man, it was a throwback driving a 5-speed automatic whenever I'm used to, all these new dual clutches and all the, even just 8-speed automatics and stuff that are way quicker, way smoother. Like, it was funny. I'd be like going up a hill in the Forerunner and I'd be like, why is it not downshifting? Like, I have my foot like halfway down on the gas pedal and I'm like, oh wait, it's just that there's only 5 gears. And this is honestly the best gear for this engine going up this hill. So it just is what it is. So unless you floor it and it goes down to a lower gear, but it's like, I'm so used to these cars maximizing performance and picking one of 8 gears to give me the perfect amount of throttle response and the right amount of boost to just go right up the hill perfectly. And, I forgot like, oh wow, like sometimes you just had to like, either floor it or just, you put your foot down halfway and just wait it. You just wait for it to just go up slowly but surely, and you're not in a hurry, and you can't be in a hurry unless you floor it. And so it's like, it was kind of a funny thing. I mean, obviously I grew up or driving a 4-speed automatic in the Subaru that I had as my first car, but it was just a funny thing. I had not driven a 5-speed automatic in years, and that was kind of a shock to be like, wow, like, yeah, like we have it really good with these new automatics. Even the crappiest ones out there these days are miles better than the 5-speed automatic and the Forerunner. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, so we have Newt says, I'm a big fan of the X3 M40i. I'd honestly buy one. The i6 is fantastic. Yeah, and it sounds really good too. They're really good. I love the one that I drove. I did a review on, a few years back. They're really solid vehicles. BMWs, I think that, Beth clearly likes the Mercedes. So if it were something like that, it would probably be like a GLC 43, but those are a little bit expensive. Again, since we're trying to stay around that 50 grand price point. So we'll see what happens with that. But the M40Is are great though, for sure. Robert, thank you so much for the super chat. He's asking, do you think all these enthusiast supercharged V8s will be collector cars someday? Hellcats, DL1s, etc. Are they worth keeping? 100%. There's very few things I'm sure of in life. That is one of them. Yes, if you can afford one of those and you can afford to keep it, even if you don't like it, throw it away in a storage unit for 20 years and forget about it, 30 years even, you will come out with a gold mine. I'm convinced of it. I mean, this is not investment advice. Don't, take me to the bank on that. But I don't see how it couldn't be unless, I don't see any way there could be. Even if everyone culturally hates gas-powered cars in 30 years and thinks they're, disgusting or, irresponsible or whatever people may think in 30 years, there still will be the people that love them, and those people will hopefully drive those prices up. But I think that, no matter what, especially I think the e-fuels is really going to keep those vehicles around as collectors vehicles. And that way they will be, totally clean with the e-fuel and all that. And, will be kind of guilt-free in a way. And so I think that will keep their staying power around, so I think 100%. And I've been saying this for a while, anyone who can afford to keep anything like that around, anything, even just V8 in general, like even my Mustang Bullet, it's not the most collectible thing. They built, 9,000 of them or whatever they ended up building. They're not rare or anything necessarily, but it's just a manual transmission with a naturally aspirated V8 engine. Like, that's not going to happen here in 10 years. So it's just, I think all that kind of stuff, whenever something is gone, there are going to be people sentimental about it. And those people that are sentimental will be willing to pay a premium because of that. And the rarity will add into that. And I think there's no way you can lose holding one of those cars unless there's some unforeseen cultural shift that I'm not anticipating. But I really think that, that's going to be a very solid investment. And this is honestly why you're seeing a lot of, it's been a couple of years since I read this article, but there was a couple, actual investment firms suggesting buying classic vehicles and collectible vehicles as better investments than stocks and stuff like that. I mean, look at a Ferrari. If you can get on the list to buy, any of these newer Ferraris, even some of the ones that are just regular production, I mean, 812 GTSs, or, especially any of the stuff like the Speciales and things like that. I mean, you can buy one of those, whatever they sticker for, 450 or something like that, fully loaded. I mean, all those cars are going for $1 million, so I mean, it's easy, like doubling your money in that area. And I think that you'll start to see that trickle down to some of these more affordable models as well, for those people who obviously can't afford their $1 million investments. But if you want to have a $40,000 investment, I think, that will certainly, continue to appreciate. And, and I'm actually curious to see what my Bullet does value wise, because obviously the market's messing with everything right now. So there's no rationality in the market currently. But, I think I'm never planning to ever sell it, but I'll be very curious to watch how that goes as an indicator for the rest of the market, as far as, this car is only, a few years old, and yet it's still worth almost its sticker price even right now. Will that be the case in 5 years? Who knows? Maybe not. But I think that eventually that curve will sweep back up, and, we could all be sitting on gold mines, all of us that are having our V8 powered cars in our garages and stuff. So we'll have to see. And I think it even goes to some of the other stuff. Just anything gas powered eventually could be collectible, honestly, So we'll see how collectible it is and how desirable it is. Because just because it's old doesn't mean it'll be collectible. You have like Model Ts you can still get for, $10,000, because how many people actually want a Model T anymore? So there's certainly some, limits to that mentality. But I think that certainly, yeah, if you can hang on to anything sweet, keep it, forget about it. And, even if you don't drive it for another 20 years, I think it'll probably be worth holding, But anyway, so Jonah's saying, do you think there could be any ethical and environmental issues with cobalt and lithium mining? I mean, I think there certainly are. I've been, seeing the articles and reading into that a little bit. And, I think that's just something they're going to have to work out, as far as, what's the lesser of the two evils, what's, the best thing from an environmental standpoint, and what's the best way to evolve those technologies. Because that's the thing is, whether we are talking about gas stuff, hydrogen stuff, electric stuff, whatever we're talking about, we're talking about it through the lenses of 2022 and our current technological limitations. And especially now with all the money being poured into battery stuff, there's a lot of companies trying to change their battery chemistry to get rid of a lot of those metals and stuff, especially the ones that are more problematic from an ethical standpoint. And so, there's a lot of promise, I think, to have new battery chemistries that kind of give you the best of all the worlds. And I was even talking about a couple of weeks back in the weekly update how there's a startup company called One, I think, that has their own unique battery they put in a Tesla Model S. And they say it's not like a bigger battery or anything. It's just that they have better chemistry with their battery cells, that they're able to do 750 miles on a charge. 750 miles. And they said, I think they actually got rid of a lot of the rare metals and stuff in them, so that it's a better battery for the environment as well. And it has like way more range than anything on the market currently, gas or electric for that matter. So, I think with all this infusion of cash coming in, this is going to evolve super fast as far as the EVs go. And so, yes, there's a lot of issues that still need to be worked out, from range standpoints, from environmental standpoints, from energy production standpoints, which is another thing that is continuing to improve and ramp up quickly as the demand ramps up for EVs. All those things improving will get us to where we need to be. I don't think that 2022 EVs with the current infrastructure and the current things that we have set up is the best solution. And, it's not like, whoa, we've made it, problem solved, cool, let's just have everyone buy them and we're set. Like, I think there's still a lot of improvements to be made. And as those things get made, things will get better and better and further that gap as far as running costs go, as far as, replacement costs, as far as, reliability, because I know a lot of the extra cars are still pretty glitchy and stuff. There's a lot of things that they still need to work out for sure, but it's getting better a lot faster than I think a lot of people even expected it to. Charge times being way faster. And I mean, look at just the Hyundai. I mean, it's so funny how this is evolving right before our eyes. Like, literally, like the Mach-E does a 10 to 80% charge in like 45 minutes. That was pretty good 2 years ago. That was average. Tesla was a little bit better, but that was average. And then we have Hyundai at the same price point with the Ioniq 5, 10 to 80% charge in like 18 minutes. That happened in 2 years. We went from 45 minutes for a charge to 18 minutes. And obviously you have the infrastructure that's going to have to keep up with that very rapid, evolution, but that's just 2 years. Like, how long did it take us, to improve gas engines over all these years? They're obviously way better than they were 50 years ago, but I mean, like, just like how your smartphone evolves so much faster and how much growth we've seen in that market just in the past 10 years, I think you're going to see the same kind of thing with EVs, where it's going to really exponentially improve and really kind of, I think, kind of settle a lot of the concerns that a lot of people have with a lot of that stuff. Obviously, you're never going to have the sound component. You're never going to have the same feelings and emotions. So there's going to be ways where EVs are never going to be as good as gas cars. But I think, again, for the masses that are commuting every day, trying to save money on fuel, I don't know. I think that EV is going to really be, a great thing, especially as those improvements do come here over the 2020s. Jacob says, what's your favorite car of 2022 so far? I guess if you're talking about stuff I just drove here in the past 2 months, I think my favorite car of 2022, going into 2022 here, we'll see what ends up, developing, but I'm really excited, like I said, for the new Z, for the new GR Corolla. Those are my top two I'm excited about. But as far as favorite car, that I've driven here for the 2022 model year, I think I really like the Civic Si. I'd probably say that probably stands out as one of my favorites for the 2022 model year that I've driven. It's so much better than I was expecting. I mean, I will be the first to admit, in my weekly update when they announced 200 horsepower, 5 less than before, more expensive, all this stuff, I was right there on the hate train, like, oh, this is going to be crappy. Like, why are they doing this? On and on and on. And then I drove it, and then I saw how it was underrated from the factory, and it's now, closely, doing about 230 horsepower in reality. I'm like so blown away that, like, if I was looking for, my own like family sedan and I just wanted to, have something without breaking the bank, 100% I would drop 28 grand on a new Civic Si tomorrow if, the situation, made sense for me. It's really that good of a car. And, I think that's my standout car here of 2022 so far. And, probably one of my favorites. I mean, the new WRX is pretty good too. You could probably watch my week with video if you want to hear about that. I think I'm excited there's a new WRX. I'm excited from a building standpoint as far as what they do with the new STI. So that's another one I'm keeping an eye on. But and also the GR86, the BRZ, that new generation is so much better. They fixed it in all the right ways and kept it the same in all the right ways. And I'm just so excited that car is even here for a second generation and that it's as good as it is. That's another one of my favorites for sure. Those are probably my top ones, I think. Ahmad says, hey, Matt, I have an SLS AMG I'd offer up to review. I'm in Minneapolis. Thank you very much for your offer. If you could send me an email, Minneapolis is a long way from me. And also, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I'm kind of staying away from exotics a little bit more because people just don't seem to watch them on my channel, unfortunately. I would love to review your car personally. Maybe I'll try, 1 or 2 exotics this year and see if the views are better. Because then that could open the door to me potentially reviewing your car. But if you could send me an email, I'll definitely keep it in my, list of cars. I have a whole running list of cars that have been offered to me. And if there's ever, a time where I'm in Minneapolis, for example, and I can, maybe bundle it in with another trip or something, I'd love to review that. Thank you for generously offering to let me review it. Those things are so sweet. And talking about future classics, I mean, that's one that's already appreciating, but man, that thing is going to be another very sought after car for a long time to come. So congrats to you for having one of those. That is an awesome accomplishment. And that's very, very cool. Jonah says, thanks for your input. Not so car related, but how is your daughter doing? She's doing great. Yeah. She's coming up. She's going to be a year old here in, about another month and a half or so here. And, she's doing great. And she's just the best thing ever. I'm totally obsessed with her. She's so much fun. And she's just amazing in every way. Highly recommend having kids. It's kind of crazy. It's like a whole nother level of like love. It's like a whole nother level of just mind-blowing happiness I don't know. I'm very much a big fan of having kids, at least, maybe I got lucky, but my daughter is an absolute dream, a very easy baby for the most part as well. And love her to death. So thanks for asking. And Tim says, don't forget the new Nissan Z Mat. I don't know about the new WRX. Time will tell. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how they do sales wise with those, with the way they're pricing them and stuff. It'd be very interesting to see how that whole thing plays out. And yeah, Z, I'm very excited about. I can say have been invited on the new Nissan Z launch, and I will be, there in the first, few journalists there to review the new Z whenever that launch happens. So I'm very excited to review that car and tell you guys all about it. And so I think that'll probably be the hottest car of the year, as far as affordable stuff goes, at least. So I'm very excited to be, having the opportunity with Nissan there to review that. So I'm excited for that for sure. Miguel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what do you think of the 11 passenger Kia Carnival? How horrible do you think the leg space is? I wish we got it here in the States because it'd be kind of fun to just see, what they're like. But yeah, that's kind of funny how they have them really packed in there with the seats. And I mean, all the different seat configurations I kind of talked about in my Kia Carnival review as well. It's impressive that they can pack that many seats in, but it's kind of funny there aren't more vehicles that have that kind of passenger space, because there used to be like all the big cargo vans and stuff that had tons of rows of seats, but now it's like if you have an enormous family, you just go for like that big Nissan van thing, and that's basically like your only choice, I think, these days. So yeah, it's kind of funny, but thank you so much for the super chat. Jose says, do you think Hyundai will be doing a version of the Ioniq 5 in the future? Yeah, they are doing one. And it's going to should be very impressive. The EV stuff that the N division is working on is wild. I talked about it in a weekly update back in the fall, whenever I was on the launch of the Elantra N. We actually got to drive the RM20E, which is their electrified Veloster prototype race car thing, and that thing was wild to drive. And that thing, they even had like speakers on the outside to make it sound like a V8, and it was crazy with the amount of power it had and stuff. And obviously they're going to probably not include a lot of that stuff on the Ioniq 5 end, but it's going to be sweet, I'm sure. I mean, the regular Ioniq 5 I was so impressed with. It's just a very fun kind of large hot hatch in a lot of ways. And so the end version is going to be even more so, crazy like that. And I'm very excited to see, in addition to just it being faster, what they do from an innovation standpoint, because Hyundai is one of the ones that's been talking about having potential like manual transmissions in electric vehicles, not an actual real mechanical manual, but like some type of digified electric manual thing, which could be kind of interesting to see. They're talking about doing more like sounds and having a selection of different sounds on the inside of the car, so you can make it sound like whatever you want from the inside, which could be kind of cool. There's a bunch of things that they're kind of playing around with from an idea standpoint. We'll see what they end up actually doing for production, but I'm excited to see what they do with it for sure. Slow M40i says, I think the C8 Z06 is a top 5 car in 2022. Yeah, I forgot that. That's another one. Yeah, for sure. That is a very sweet car. We'll see if I end up getting invited to review that or not, but that's another one that, yeah, definitely one of the sweetest cars of this year. Even without driving it, I can, just say that the fact that it has the engine it has is going to be amazing, and I'm just very excited about that car for sure. So that's another one. Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that, but thanks for reminding me. Jonas says, what are your thoughts on getting an R129 or R230 SL as a daily driver? I know very little about those. Unfortunately, I can't give you any intelligent comments on them, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, that seems to be another vehicle that is appreciating, and all those old Mercedes SLs will be collectibles, I'm sure. So that's probably another one that would be worth getting. I'm sure they're super comfortable as well. Roger's asking why BMW made the new M240i that heavy. I haven't really paid much attention to the M240i yet, because I haven't had a chance to watch any of the reviews out there on them. But it sounds like it's a promising vehicle, and it seems like a lot of people seem to like them. So I'm not sure about the weight factor, but hopefully that's something they'll maybe fix with the M2. We'll see. But yeah. And Jorge, thank you so much here for the super chat. He says, what was the car that got you into cars? Me, it was a 4-year-old brain watching the old Mach 5 way back in the old Speed Racer cartoon. That was one of the first car shows for me too, actually. Yeah, that was, I don't really know what the
trigger was for me to get into cars, because my dad wasn't really into cars. I didn't really have any family members into cars. I had no outside influences that really would have pushed me to cars. I think like most boys, I was just offered Hot Wheels cars and stuff like that maybe kind of triggered it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the earliest things for me, was watching Speed Racer back in the day. I watched that show every day when I got home from school. And then it was also, I think, just kind of playing around with like car video games. I think I just, was playing video games on, my Super Nintendo back in the day, and like the racing ones were the ones that I enjoyed, a little bit more. And I kind of just kept going with that, I think. And I think one thing that got me really into cars a lot more in depth was Gran Turismo. My friend had the original version on PS1. And then once I finally got a PS1, that was when Gran Turismo 2 was coming out. And so I bought that one brand new, and I still have the copy of it actually over in that DVD case. And Gran Turismo 2 really, I think, grew my understanding of cars, as far as like, hey, I can buy an intake and I can buy an exhaust, and like you can change the power, and like what racing is, and actual racing, not just, like Cruising USA racing, but like actual racing. And so I think that's what really kind of furthered that. But yeah, there's nothing I can point to as like a day where I was like, yes, that is what got me into cars. I think, with whenever I was 11, like I said, getting a Joyride in a WRX, that's what really triggered my love of like real cars, and especially the WRX and just performance stuff in general. That was one of the big things. But I think, yeah, Speed Racer is definitely one of the things for me, for sure, that's to thank for getting into cars. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, sorry I'm late, just dropping by to say love your channel and keep up the great work. Well, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate that. And thank you also for the super chat. I really appreciate it, Kyle. And I see your comments on the videos and stuff as well, Kyle. I really appreciate all the commenting and the support on the channel and on the videos. It really means a lot, because again, it all comes back to you guys watching stuff. That's how, I'm able to keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm always very thankful for that. Blue Collar Jose, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, would you and Beth like to work in the movie industry again? 100%. We were just talking about that the other day, how we'd love to, go back to being extras. And I think that's something I'm actually going to see if I can try and do a little bit of this year. If I fit in and I'm actually someone who's selected, I'm going to try and start submitting, I think, to be an extra a little bit as time allows here this year, because I do really miss it. That is like the one thing outside of like driving cars quickly, that is the only other thing that like really gets my heart pumping, like super excited, is being on a movie set. Is just, it's a rush like nothing else. I love it. So hopefully I'll be able to get back into it. And if I am able to get back into it, I'll certainly give you guys a heads up if there's anything new that I end up being in. But I miss it for sure. It was so much fun. And Beth, we'll have to see, maybe once the baby's weaned and all that kind of stuff, she might be able to get back into it as well. But, since she's a stay-at-home mom, it's kind of a full-time job for her. So it's a little bit tougher for her to, get out of the house, especially being a movie extra. Sometimes you're gone for, 12 hours or something like that. So it's a long time to be away if you have a little kid. So we'll see, about her, but she'd like to get into it for sure down the road. And slow M40I is asking what movies I've been in. I did a video breaking them all down, because honestly I can't even remember all of them off the top of my head. But if you search for like I was a movie extra or something like that on the channel, you can see I go through it all and I show screenshots and stuff of some of them that I was in. But the first one I was in was Abduction, which is a Taylor Lautner action movie that was filmed. I was in Fathers and Daughters with Russell Crowe, and that was really cool seeing Russell Crowe. I was in the scene with him, and being able to, see how he acted and stuff was really, really cool. I was in Foxcatcher, which is really cool because I was able to be in the same room as Steve Carell and Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo and stuff. So that was really cool. And yeah, there's been a bunch. Perks of Being a Wallflower is really cool. That was one that I really enjoyed and spent a few days on that one. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is really cool because I got to, be in a few scenes with Emma Watson, and it was kind of funny because in the movie she plays an American and she was like speaking in her American accent for all of her lines, and then like I was like walking down a hallway and she just happened to be walking past me on her cell phone and she's talking in a British accent. It was kind of a funny little like, oh yeah, I forgot she's British. But so that was kind of cool, kind of, brushing past her and stuff. So there's been some fun things there for sure. And it's also how I met Beth was on a movie set for a Shane Dawson movie. So that was one of the worst movies I was in, but that was how we met. So it's always a cool story. Thank you for linking it, Nude. I appreciate that. Yeah, you can check out that video if you want to hear all about it. And Slow M40I is asking, is the pay good being in movies? Not as an extra. There are some exceptions, but most of the movies that I was on, it was minimum wage for the first 8 hours and then time and a half after that. So it's definitely not a lucrative thing. There's some that are different. And obviously, like if you're in like commercials and stuff, those can pay a lot more. Even as an extra in a commercial, you can get paid a lot more than being in a movie. But yeah, pay is not great most of the time, but you do it for the fun of it. And especially since the hours are so long, if it goes beyond those 8 hours, which it almost certainly usually does, I mean, it can add up to a decent pay compared to the average, kind of job where you're, just doing something as a gig kind of thing or something. The pay is pretty decent compared to that, I guess. But yeah, because most of the days was, 12 to 16 hours on set was like kind of the average. So, once you're getting up there with the overtime, then it kind of racked up a little bit more, but still, yeah, not a ton. Fastline says he's going to college for acting. That's awesome. Best of luck to you with that. I briefly considered an acting career as well. I even went to like a casting party in LA and kind of was trying to work my way into the scene there, and was even shopping around for apartments in LA with a buddy for a while, and just didn't end up making sense for me. And I ended up, deciding to do the YouTube channel as well, which was like something that was actually had a higher chance of success and was also something I was a little more passionate about. So that's why I did it. But yeah, it was fun being in the movies for sure. And yeah, so it's, like I said, definitely go watch that video for all the details, because there's a few other movies I'm forgetting as well, because there's been a good amount of them, but those are kind of some of the highlights that stand out to me. Blake says, thoughts on a new Dodge Dakota? That's something that, yeah, I think is coming, but I don't know why Dodge is taking so long with the midsize pickup thing. You'd think they'd be rushing something like that out as fast as they possibly could, but they just, I don't know, they're taking their time with it. So yeah, I think it'll be great once they finally do, because I mean, Dodge makes great trucks. I mean, I guess I should say Ram. All the Rams are great. I think that the 1500 is still my favorite truck in the segment. So I think that if they did a new Dakota, it'd be, a really strong seller and probably the best in its class in a lot of ways. So yeah, I don't know what they're waiting for, but hopefully we'll see something like that someday. Although at this point, with the way things are going, especially with Stellantis, they might just skip straight to making it an EV and just have one of the first, kind of mid-size EV pickup trucks or something out there. We'll have to see. But yeah, Fastline didn't realize they were making a new Dakota. It's kind of been in the rumor mill. It hasn't been confirmed anything, officially by Dodge or anything like that. But, it just, there's been like spied mules of like hacked up trucks running around that are way too small to be 1500s. But they're always like rough mules, and they don't ever actually, seem to be making its way to production or anything finalized. So I don't know what the holdup is there, but yeah, it's they're taking their sweet time with that for sure. So yeah, we have a couple of questions here. I can scroll up because I think they've slowed down a little bit. Super Steve says, should I buy a 5th gen Camaro SS or a ZL1? I mean, more power is always more fun, so I'd say ZL1 probably. But they're both fantastic. I mean, 5th gen Camaros I think are really cool. I love the styling on them and stuff. And even just the regular SS is a blast. So you can't go wrong with either one. But ZL1, obviously having more power is always more fun. Ninjas Are Real says, what specialty car do you think Ford will bring, or do you think Ford will bring in the S650? Perhaps a Boss? Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do as far as special editions for the S650. I think what we can expect is there's going to be an electric version at some point, although there's rumors that might be for like the next version after the S650. But, it's always kind of a mystery with Ford as far as, what they decide to do. I mean, sometimes things coincide with anniversaries, both the way the S650 is coming out from a anniversary standpoint, there's not really any good ones they can hit aside from hitting all the same ones they already hit with, the S5, the S550s. So, I mean, it'd be cool if they did something new and they did another Boss, since it's been a little bit of a longer time since they did one of those. But yeah, I'm not sure. what they'll do. I'm kind of wondering if maybe they do a new Mach 1 to go alongside, the Mach E. I don't know if that was ever part of their consideration with the current Mach 1 that's out there, but that could be something as well. But I think a Boss would make sense. But I think basically all the historic nameplates are on the table. But I think also with the way Ford is changing quickly, I wouldn't expect as many of the historic nameplates as they used to have. Maybe they'll do some as a final hurrah, but I'm not expecting a new Bullet, because I think that's something that, those older nameplates, they really, kind of appeal to an older buyer for the most part, who appreciated the older ones, appreciates the history, but I think with Ford, modernizing things so much, they might try and go for something, different. And like I said, do the electric one, or just do, something different out of the ordinary, and, kind of do a little bit less of the heritage kind of stuff. But we'll see. It'll be fun to see. I'm excited to see what they do with the new S650 in general. So I think there's some talks that it'll just be carryover stuff, and then other talks that it's going to have some like hybridization across the board and stuff like that. We'll see. There's talks of all-wheel drive. There's all kinds of things. So, with those new variables, having an all-wheel drive version, that opens up the variants. Like, what if they do a Mustang RS that's all-wheel drive, turbo 4, but has a hybrid thing? So, it has way more power, something like that. I could see, even honestly, more likely to see a Mustang RS, in my opinion, than a new Mustang Boss. But again, anything's on the table, I'm sure. We'll see what Ford decides to do. Fastline says, do you know the price of a Tesla Model 3 base model? Tesla website says they add an extra payment. I just need to know the real price. If you go on Tesla's site, they do have like the cash price, and that will list out very plainly for you there what the actual starting price is for them. I believe it's like 49,000 or something like that. I could be wrong. But they definitely keep raising the price every couple of months, it seems. So, they're who knows what the price is going to be, in even a year from now. So, but Ninjas of Rails also saying, asking, but they had to go back on the horsepower for 2020 Mach 1 due to the emissions. They say S650 may be less than the base GT. Yeah, and that's why, there's more and more people thinking that the hybrid thing could end up, being something that they do for that reason. Because if they have to cut back on the power of the engines, you have the electric motors come in, kind of keep going with that horsepower increase, and, what everyone's expecting, which is probably at this point a 500 horsepower, regular Mustang GT. How do you do that if you have to, dial back the engine? And so that's where, enter the electric motors, and that'll, hopefully get them to that point. So I don't know. And then there's also people who just want the V8 and they don't care about the horsepower number. Look at how the Challenger RT sells really well, even though that's, the least powerful V8 of all the muscle cars, but they still sell a ton of them. So I think there's also some of that, of people who just they don't want hybrid, but they don't want a 4-cylinder. So maybe Ford just keeps the V8 around and just keeps, dropping the horsepower on it as long as they need to. But people are still happy because it still has the V8 sound, does not have the hybrid assistance they don't want. And then, they still sell totally fine, probably. So I think that's something we could see as well. Richard's saying, what are your thoughts on the MX-5 Club RF versus the Grand Touring RF seats? Clubs are now order only, so I can't see it in person first. Ordered a gray RF Club. Well, congrats on the order. As far as the seats, I think so. Are you talking, I think Grand Touring is the leather, and the Club, are you talking like the Recaro seats in the Club, or just the cloth in the Club? I'm not sure which one. The Recaros are definitely stiffer than the Grand Touring seats. If it were me, I like comfort a little bit more. I would go Grand Touring. But the Club, is going to be great if you're especially someone who just has it as a weekend car or something like that. So I think there's, some of that kind of plays in. But, I would say if you're really wanting to, feel them out for yourself, though, even though you can't maybe find one at a dealership new, try and find a used one, try and hunt down some used ones and just sit in them. And that way you can actually get, an experience for yourself about, what the comfort's like. You can even test drive them if they're used, I'm sure, and kind of get a good feel for it that way. That would be my recommendation, so that you're making the right choice, especially if it's a car you're going to drive a lot. Obviously, seat comfort is very important. So I would probably, verify that, you have what you want. But yeah, personally, I would go for the Grand Touring seats over the Recaros for sure. Stephen Rapp, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, did you buy the Bullet due to the cool factor, to the exclusion of the GT350 or 500 based on price? I bought the Bullet because I love the movie Bullet, because I'm a huge Steve McQueen fan. That was going back to one of the earlier questions about what got me into cars. That was one of the other things that really clicked in my brain. It was after Speed Racer and stuff, but like seeing that Bullet chase for the first time as a kid and seeing a car jumping over hills, and the awesome driving, the burnouts and stuff in the Bullet chase scene, that just imprinted on my brain as like, this is like the epitome of cool. And so it's always been kind of a biased thing in my opinion, as far as why I wanted a Bullet. I think there's a value proposition there as well, considering it gave you more horsepower and some nice features for very little money extra over a performance pack level 1 GT. But for me, it was always just the fact that it's dark green. It has no badges except the Bullet badge on the back. That's all it took for me to buy it. So the GT350 is a better car for sure. Aside from reliability, I'd say GT500 is a great car. I also really love a manual, and so not having the manual is another thing that excludes the GT500 for me personally. But obviously there's a price thing to play as well. I'll be honest, I can't afford a GT500. I can't even really afford a GT350 new, or whatever they go for now used. So there's some of that as well. It was just the Bullet was the sweet spot from a price standpoint. It was a sweet spot as far as my personal love of Bullet stuff, and just the fact that it gave me everything I wanted. It gave me the manual with auto rev matching. It gave me the digital gauges I really liked, the more comfortable seats than the GT350. I mean, the base GT350 is still the same seats, but they had the Alcantara in the middle, which I don't love. I like having the full leather. So it was just a combination of basically all the right stuff in the Bullet. It just so happened that it was also the Bullet that I would have bought and compromised on a bunch of those things if I had to, but it just all kind of came together perfectly. It's kind of crazy how it worked out that way, but so that's why I bought the Bullet for sure. And that's why I will keep the Bullet. And if someone offered me a GT500 or a GT350 as a even trade, I'd still say no. You could show up with $100,000 GT500. I'd say, nope, I'm keeping my Bullet. Like, that's how much I love it and how biased I am. So in my own personal assessment of it. So yeah, that's how much I love that thing, which is, I know, makes no sense whatsoever, but that's just my crazy thoughts. Goth Rocker, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. He says, speaking of older nameplates, I live in PA. You can review my 2017 Lincoln Continental. I know it screams enthusiast car, LOL, but I really love it. Style, pure luxury, comfort. Been a viewer since the beginning with your BRZ. I appreciate all the support over the years. I really do appreciate it. And I think you made a great choice of the Continental. That is another car. I think we've talked about this in past live streams or in comments in the past, that it's just, I think it should have done better. I know some people wanted it to have a bigger trunk and a bigger back seat, and they could have definitely given it those two things and it probably would have sold better. But I love the Continental. I think they're great. The quick drive I didn't want, I was very impressed with it. And if you're someone who just wants a luxurious car, they're great. It's kind of funny. I still love the Continental so much that even on my last, I think it was my last press trip or my second to last press trip I was on, I can't remember which, but whenever I go on press trips, they pick you up from the airport with a chauffeur and they, take you to the hotel where you're staying and all that. And then the same thing happens on the drive back to the hotel or to the airport. And, on the guy that picked me up for the chauffeur on the drive, I think it actually was for the WRX, that launch event. The guy that picked me up in a Lincoln Continental. And I was so excited to ride in the back of a Lincoln Continental because I've actually never ridden in the back of one. And so I was like, sweet. It was a long drive too, because it was from, Napa Valley all the way to SFO. And that's, depending on traffic, it's a completely different time frame. But it was like an hour and a half drive in the back of a Continental. And I enjoyed riding in the back of that so much. It's probably so silly to most other people, but I was like, oh yes, I'm finally riding in a Lincoln Continental. I love them. I think they're great. So thank you so much for the super chat and all the support, and keep that Lincoln Continental, because that's another car kind of rare. So, who knows, maybe those will appreciate someday too. Mir, I guess he'll have him as the last question here, because we're coming up on 2 hours. Says, is the 5th gen Camaro SS more enjoyable to drive around than a Camaro ZL1? It depends on your preferences as far as driving. If you're someone who likes to wring out a motor more, obviously, the less power you have, the harder you can drive a car. So it's just that whole balancing act of, if you have a ZL1 with tons of power, you press the gas pedal down a quarter of the way and you're already doing 100 miles an hour, and that's the end of it, And so with an SS, you can kind of ring it out a little bit more. So it just comes down to, personal preference as far as what people like. Some people like driving a fast car slower. Some people like driving a slow car faster. So it all is just personal preference as far as that goes. But they're both a ton of fun. I think from my personal experiences and my personal biases and opinions, I think that I did enjoy this DL1 a little bit more because I don't think I actually have driven a stock 5th gen SS, but the 5th gen SS that I did drive, I think the gearing just felt a little bit tall. Even the one I did was a modified one. But I just feel like the ZL1 maybe felt a little bit better suited to the manual gearbox. But it's been a long time since I've driven both. So I'd really have to drive both again to give a good newer opinion on it. But you can definitely go back and watch my reviews on both of those cars to kind of give you an idea of what my thoughts were in the moment as I was driving them. And hopefully that'll maybe, help with your decision making there. But both are fantastic. Those Camaros are so underrated, I think, in a lot of ways. It's still a shame the Camaros haven't sold better than they have. But anyway, that's 2 hours here, so I'm going to cut it off here. But thank you to all of you that joined, and especially thanks to all of you who gave very generous super chats. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this live stream. Next month's live stream, I'll have to figure out when I'm going to do it because I will be doing a press trip around that time. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I may not do one until May. As a result, we'll have to see. But I appreciate those of you who joined in here. I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Hopefully, things improve here in the world as well. And but anyway, stay tuned for the review this week. It will be the Jeep Grand Cherokee, by the way. So not a very enthusiast vehicle. That was one of the last of the non-enthusiast expensive stuff that I won't be doing much of anymore. But doing that, and then after that, I'll be doing the new refreshed Jetta GLI here the following week and getting back to affordable stuff, from that point on. So anyway, thank you guys very much for joining once again. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.